we're going to move on to topic 4 now, which
Okay.
is for any of my business colleagues, corporate colleagues that I've worked with in the past. I'm sure you're going to be really interested in this topic. So this is leadership as a skill learn. And the reason why I wanted to touch on this is because obviously we've had conversations in the past, and I just think the taught versus learn analogy that you use, and the theory, I should say, that really stuck with me, and I'd like other people to hear it. So if you want to just take us into that a little bit, Frank.
Well, pictorially, the way I see it, there's some things in life you can be taught. There are other things in life you can only learn. If you think of a rectangle in front of you right now, and two parallel lines going a slight diagonal, right? Within these parallel lines are your values that are non-negotiable. They must be lived every moment, whether you're the start of your life's journey or the end of your life's journey. That life experience thing. At the beginning, on the bottom side, because remember your lines are going down like this, the bigger area here are the things you can be taught earlier in your life. These are the things that you're taught at school. You can read in books. You can get lectures on. You can pick up on virtually now. They're kind of the tools of your trade, or if you like, the science of what you do. Because if you have these building blocks in to begin with, you're going to have a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
So that allows you to get into the game. As you go further through life, actually what you're taught has less and less significance. But what begins to have more and more significance is what you learn in life's journey. What you learn is the art, if you like, of how to use what it is you've been taught. And also, of course, how you use what you will progressively learn as you go through life experience. The trouble with experience as your educator, of course, was summed up by Vernon Law when he said, experience is the cruelest of all teachers because she gives you the test first and the lesson second. And I think, but I think you need that. You said yourself a few moments ago, the idea of you must put yourself into situations. Earlier on when I spoke about the risk, fear, courage diagram, you have to step up and go in there. Because there are certain things in life you can only learn through experience. But when you're doing that, when you're going through that learning, it's very good to have a mentor or a coach or a pal, an honest pal, who once you've been through an experience, you can sit down with and make sure that you've learned what you needed to learn from that experience.
Yeah, because it can, that's where, when you go through that, I think, and then when we learn, it's usually, and the learning that sticks with us is something that's hurt us maybe, or something that's like been a disappointment. So what you're saying there is good to have someone around you because you can debrief on it. And this debrief was talked on at the IFAC conference the other week about the ambulance, how they do that debrief. And that's so important because for me, and being able to talk through it, you've released it again and you learn from it and you can get over it quicker. I think that's the key for me, being able to talk about these things.
I think you're right. And what the way I like to describe that whole process is you've got to be able to learn on the run, to learn as you go through things. You can prepare for it. I don't know how, what all your leaders do out there, your colleagues who are listening in terms of this, but for example, in sport, we do, first of all, things called red teaming. Of course, you get trained and your practice, you've done all the preparation for an event. When you do that, you then sit down before you go into something. It may be a battle for an account. It may be a particular day of out there in operations. You create a group within your own organization who will red team you. Now, what that means is they're going to push back at you and try to undo your plan. In other words, they're trying to. You've gone in with a plan. What happens if the opposition undo it for you, right?
Yeah.
So You think that through. So this is, again, preparing yourself for what's going to happen out there, because you don't want the emotional trauma of having to face all that stuff and you don't know how to deal with it, right? So that's part of your preparation. There's another thing that they do now called pre-mortems. And a pre-mortem is, imagine you've gone for your game on a Saturday. You were beaten. It's Monday morning now. Why did you lose? And this encourages you to look deeply into yourself as to where you might still be short on what's needed for the battle that's out there in front of you. Okay. So that's the start. That's the start of a period of learning.
So are you looking for your weakness before you go in? Then is that what you're saying by that pre? Because I've done post-mortem. We do that in business, but I guess a pre-walkthrough we've done. But yeah, I think saying it in that way, pre-mortem is like going, right, what could go wrong or where the weaknesses.
But your question is not only about your weaknesses, but did you use your strengths properly?
Okay.
You know, so that's before. During the event, you've got to be able, again, whether it's a negotiating procedure or so on, do you have some kind of a system in there where you will learn fast to adjust, adapt, and move in a different direction if you need to do that? Then finally, your point on flagging the review session, absolutely right. We've got to be able, in everything in our lives, to debrief ourselves. Mm-hmm. Debrief at the end of your own day, debrief at the end of a working day, debrief at the end of a campaign. Because I talk about the 4 R's. There are 4 R's to how you operate out there. First of all, reason. Why are you doing this? Even if it's a meeting, right? You've got a board meeting, a team meeting, whatever. Why are we having this team meeting, right? Do you know why we're here? What's the purpose? So first, what's the reason? Second, reality. Who's involved? What's to be done? And how's it to be done? Mm-hmm. Third R, review. And in advance, prepare to learn. Being prepared to learn is not just an attitude thing. It's having the machinery in place so that you can. So you review or reflect, whatever you want to describe that. At that point, just a little sidebar here, try to differentiate in your mind between reflect and review. Reflect involves emotions. Understand, reflect always involves emotions of some kind because you're looking deeper. Yeah. Review is more of a mathematical kind of thing. And finally, and really important, the final R, response. What are you going to do differently or better as a consequence of this experience? Right?
Okay, so I resonate with some of those from the business world. I wanted to ask you a question on that then, about the timely manner of it. So what's your view on, say you've done some sort of, I don't know, you've had a big event or you've done, big implementation. What's your view on when you do that post-mortem or that review? Is it immediate? Is it in a month when you've seen things bed in? What's your view on that?
Well, I think the jargon now is a hot debrief and a cold debrief, right? The hot debrief is immediately after it's over. Immediately, mm-hmm. Right? Well, your heart's still pounding, you're sweating, your brain's buzzing with what. If you talk to me at this point, mm-hmm. You'll talk to me honestly because you're giving me your feelings, the realities of what happened out there. Yeah. And I can coach that. I promise you I can coach that once I know what it is, because that's honesty, right? Yeah. What I don't want you to be doing, for example, I used to have big fights with the television channels on this when I was a head coach. It's a long time ago now, and you can see things are quite different. I was very angry if the media spoke to athletes before me or their coaches after the event. Because if you're not careful, the moment you're in front of camera, you become cosmetic and artificial. You make sure that they see what clothes you're wearing. You throw in a bit of nonsense for your sponsor, and if you're not careful, you get nothing.
You lose it.
So by the time they come to speak to me or to speak to their coaches, their brains that stuff's gone. So get a hot debrief. I had the privilege of listening to a day with the Red Arrows. Went up to see them in a practice session that we did, And when they landed, they were already debriefing, talking to each other on the intercom as they taxied back to park the planes, before they then went in to what was still, relatively speaking, a hot debrief with video and so on. But by that time, you could start looking at numbers, statistics, and so on.
Yeah.
So I think the best way to do debriefs in business is in these two bits: an immediate, and then later, when you can employ the analytical bits and pieces, all the numbers and statistics and so on, and then you move on to change your behaviours for the future.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Frank. So I've just got one final question then to wrap up this section. Leadership then. So we're on leadership as a skill. What would you say, if you've got a really demanding project or team, or, in sports, as a leader, what is the top trait, I guess, would you have to have? Because there's leaders and there's managers, and I've seen it. But what defines a leader, would you say? What sets them apart?
Well, actually, I think there's a legendary coach in the States, John Wooden, and he was legendary because he was absolutely a brilliant basketball coach for University College Los Angeles Bruins. And understand that in college basketball, you've got different kids coming through. There's a cycle of the new people coming to each. He won 10 NCAA titles out of 12, which is like winning the European Cup 10 years out of 12. So he was pretty good at his job. Part of this, the core of his approach working with his team was you must get into a position where you tell your team what it is that they must achieve, but leave it to them to work out how to do it, how to achieve it. I think if you can get your leadership style into one where, of course, you'll start off in all of these things with a sense of process, to help them take ownership. Because that's what you need to happen. Don't ever think in life that you give ownership to people. You don't. People take ownership. You've got to you've got to take ownership of the process that will lead. And that's why, as a coach, I always figured there was 4 steps you went through as a coach. The first step is you're the light. You light their path. You show them where they have to go. As a leader, you give them the vision. This is what we're trying to achieve in life, and this is the track we're going to try to go on. Next is you teach them how to generate their own light. Next, you're the mirror that reflects their light.
No, this is a new one to me. I've not heard you talk about this, so I love this.
Next, you're the mirror that reflects their light, and finally, you step out of the light, because you'll cast shadows.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to use that. I absolutely love that. Me step out of the light, though. I'm joking. But I think what you're saying there is, and if I think back to the best people that I've worked for in terms of leaders, it is when they've given me the room to breathe and just to go, we trust you, get on with it. This is what we're trying to achieve. So yeah, I totally relate to that.
And you don't do it irresponsibly. We still have the sense that we come together and we go through the 4 R's, right?
Yeah.
But what you can't do is take that a stage further and turn it into micromanagement. Like the people should not feel that you're looking over their shoulder all the time.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. Anything else to finish on there, Frank, on that one?
Just a final kind of throwaway lines, again, from the leadership point of view. Make sure that there's clarity in what you do, clarity of communication, clarity of the vision, clarity of what people have to do. Make sure that that's focused. And to do that, make sure you get your language right, because sometimes leaders will use words that they don't need to use. I was taught a lesson by an editor very early on in my coaching life, a Scottish national coach at the time, and the editor said to me, Frank, always write for the reading age of 12. And what he was trying to say to me is, don't show off with all the stuff that you've learned around the world. You've got to make it easy and digestible for people. use the language that they understand. Or in sport, give them a ball they can use, not the one you want to give them, right?
Keep it simple. I love that.
Secondly, curiosity. Never stop being curious. You've got to be consistently wanting to learn more. Next, have courage. Have the courage to be vulnerable. And part of that, being vulnerable, is this ability to create candid conversations where people can come back at you just as to make comments to you, to help you be better at your job.
Yeah.
Next, connection. I mean, I don't know what kind of books you read, Gina, but I'm quite a fan of Leonardo da Vinci. And I've read most of his biographies. The most recent one is by a guy called Isaacson. And it's brilliant. But he summarizes the two great qualities that Da Vinci had. One was observation. And again, I would suggest to everybody out there, make sure your observation skills are great. When you look at something, do you really see it? Do you see what's going on? Mm-hmm. When you're listening, do you actually hear things? The most important of these two, learn to listen. Learn to listen really actively out there. And the other side, that you mentioned, the other quality of Da Vinci is actually what I'd make my next, in my order of advice: clarity, curiosity, courage, is connection. What Da Vinci was brilliant at was taking one concept in life and applying it to another, to create analogies, if you like, or metaphors. And yeah. Actually, that's part of a great skill to have, is your ability to tell stories. If you can tell stories and create pictures in people's minds, it's a wonderful gift to have, because it really helps communication and it really helps things work. Da Vinci was the person who first described the circulatory system in our body. Up to that point, nobody could describe it. How did he manage to do that? By looking at trees and their branches and the twigs and the trunk and so on, and looking at rivers. And so these two qualities, I think, are important for us. Yeah. Observation and connection. And finally, it's all about commitment. Are you committed to the task?
I love that. Frank, I'm so inspired, and I feel like I've got so much more than I even bargained for there. I know we've had conversations prior to this, but there's so much come out of that. So I just personally want to say thank you for taking the time, and on behalf of everyone who's watching, I'm sure they'll thank you as well. Yeah, I just feel blessed that you agreed to do this with me, and I'm forever grateful, and for the session that you taught 15 years ago, and just to let you know that, sometimes you might not have even known or thought that you could have, that affected me so much, and the whole visualization thing, I first learned that from you. So thank you.
Well, thanks very much. That's very, very humbling, and can just follow up on that just slightly for everybody who's watching. Is always remember that when you stand in front of an audience, in front of a group of people, and you're trying to pass a message over, always understand this: each one of them will pick up their own message, and you may change somebody's life, you may solve a problem, but you actually don't know who they are. But that comes back to my point about they're listening. They're listening for something that they want to hear. And sometimes in life, you can be really unfortunate and be the person that says it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Frank. And as I said, I will put Frank's website on here, where you can get his books from and find out more information from him. But for now, again, thanks to everyone who's watching, and thank you so much, Frank Dick.
Pleasure.